shit, man. Oh, fuck. It's open. Oh, thank God. Oh, I really gotta shit. Oh, yes. Wow, it smells so good in here. Oh, yeah. Oh, no. Oh, no, never mind. No. I'm not hiding here. No, fuck that. Okay. Oh, God. Oh my God.
I'm so horny.
Oh my God, I'm horny too. I'm fucking horny. Resident Evil 4 ruined Resident Evil. It's hard not to think that this action horror masterpiece might have sorta kinda irreparably altered the trajectory of the franchise forever, casting a gargantuan shadow over the preceding entries and almost completely abandoning the design ethos of what came before. Everything after it has been indebted to its design, or else purposefully shedding the influence to distance themselves from 4's immediate offspring, 5 and 6. But now Capcom has gone back to 4's well with a heavy-duty bucket and delivered unto us a soft remake, Resident Evil Village. This'll work out just fine, right? You probably already know how similar Village is to 4, and the game doesn't even try to hide it.
What are you buying? Just something an old friend of mine used to say.
The thought was pervasive as I played, with all the points of reference and similarities between the games. I've been infected with the comparison, and it doesn't leave Village in the best light. Specifically, it's the game's combat that has me disappointed in basically every regard. Now, I've talked on Resident Evil 4 in the past, and while that video was critical of its themes and ludonarrative, I just want to reiterate that playing Resident Evil 4 is some of the best murder I've experienced in a game, full stop. It has set a high fucking bar for me, and Village doesn't come near to clearing it. Like, Resident Evil 4's gunplay is some tasty shit. There's nothing quite like precision aiming that red dot sight on a guy's head and popping it like a pimple on Satan's ass, or setting up a group roundhouse kick to then blow up a village's worth of people with an awkwardly lobbed grenade. The context-sensitive hit spots on the human enemies gives every gunshot consequences, which at a base level feels good, but also allows for reliably repeatable attacks and decisions during combat. Do I shoot their head to allow for a kick which can take out a group? Shoot a knee and suplex a guy to move him out of the way? Shoot out this running guy's leg so he falls and I can put my attention on someone else? A bullet doesn't just deplete health, it allows complete control over a situation to protect oneself and buy time. Even contentious features like tank controls and the weapon switching are, to me, lovable quirks. Tank controls force you to be precise in your positioning and incentivize group management, even if it can be a pain in the ass from time to time. And while they might be a holdover from Resi 4 being a fixed camera game in an earlier iteration, if we look at its Neo beat-em-up cousin God Hand, I think Mikami deliberately chose to keep the control scheme, or else knew how to create a game around this maybe limitation. The controls ain't perfect for sure. The 3 Parasite Knights, or IT, have levels that do not lend themselves to this kind of locomotion. But despite that, I rarely think to myself that I wish I could move and shoot or move left and right. There's also the weapon switching, which adds this turn-based feel to encounters. Every time I go to switch a weapon, I get a moment to breathe and really consider what it is I'm about to do. Technically, this could be done in any other game that has a pause button, but this game is designed to force that moment of consideration, and I appreciate it. It's jank, but that was the era 4 came out of, the GameCube PS2 generation, where there was always something uncomfortable or weird in how a game plays. This fallacious appeal to nostalgia shouldn't really hold up to scrutiny, but I think Resi 4 is at best enhanced by it, or at worst isn't hindered by it. Resident Evil Village, though, that's a modern AAA video game with the jank sanded off to give us a polished combat experience. Despite that, what we're left with is a pretty standard first-person shooter that benefits from the player being a bit conservative with ammo. This makes Resi Village at a base level, for me, very playable. Not in a it doesn't crash way, but in a I could play this game 6 times through and know I will have a minimum amount of engagement with it way. However, for me, this would probably hold true for like 50% of FPSs using a mouse and keyboard. Halo, Call of Duty, Half-Life 2, Crysis, fucking Starbreeze's Syndicate. I'll devote playthroughs to these games which I don't think have the most interesting combat or gameplay in general, all because I get to aim a gun with a mouse. Like all Americans, I have been instilled divinely with a primal desire to spend time in a gun range, be it physical or virtual. So Resident Evil being this Halloween-decorated virtual gun range makes it playable, but that can only take it so far. Being without context-sensitive hit spots on enemies really sucks out a lot of engagement and thought from combat. Maybe this isn't a fair comparison to make. Besides Dead Space, I can't think of other shooters with enemies designed to be so deliberately interactable. But when you're making an homage or spiritual successor or what have you, I think it's important to consider the elements that made the original good and how you can modify them to a new title. Instead, all we got are enemies who'll stagger a bit after 2 to 3 pistol shots on normal mode, maybe 7 on Village of Shadows mode. Yeah, there's the shotguns, but 1, their area of effect is not very wide. 2, their ammo is more precious. 3, if the game actually took from Resi 4, it would let the pistol be the tool for precise crowd control that it should be, instead of a bog-standard low-damage, fast-ish rate-of-fire gun. Major power to control groups has been ceded to the explosives in the game, either the grenades or mines. At least there's something, but that changes the engagement from needing precise aiming and being fully aware of the opponents in front of you, to making sure you have the crafting materials to make bombs and being at a safe distance when you drop a grenade. Your mines can't hurt you. Other than that, there isn't much to say about the gunplay. Blocking attacks is a welcome feature, keeping head-on conflict from being a completely reckless decision. And along with that comes the push, which can clear paths, though to be honest, I didn't know how to trigger this for my first 3 playthroughs. You can also kinda quick switch your guns now, though I don't think there is much benefit to doing so. The initial switch can let you shoot a shotgun and a sniper rifle in quick succession, about 52 frames. But after that, the times increase more than double. Going sniper back to shotgun is 135 frames between them firing. These timings will change as you pay for the rate of fire for guns to go up, but you can't compensate for slow fire rates by quick switching. It doesn't work like that. Honestly, Village could get away with its simpler gunplay if it made up for it in the things surrounding the shooting, but it also fails at that too. For example, the game's orthogonal unit differentiation, or yes, I've watched Game Maker's Toolkit. This overly verbose term simply means how unique is each enemy type relative to each other. And I think when sat next to each other, villages are relatively diverse. The Lycans are fast, able to dodge and shoot arrows, and their armored counterparts are spongy and slow. The emaciated enemies kind of stumble around, which can make them hard to hit and dangerous up close. The bats erratically flap about, the massive wolves are tanks on all fours, and there are the soldats with 4 different variations and levels of mobility, each needing to be baited to be attacked in their weak points. It's a varied cast that rarely gets used to their full potential because, save for a couple of occasions, you don't fight more than 1 type at a time. If there's Lycans, you're just getting Lycans, maybe 2 armored ones or 2 arrow ones thrown in there, but that's it. If it's the big wolf you're up against, it's just the big wolf. Skinny dudes are just with skinny dudes, soldats, you guessed it, 1 type at a time. It's frustrating because I think they could all play off of each other in interesting ways. Even if the only different variables are movement speed, amount of health, and amount of super armor, or how many hits it takes for them to stagger, at least it could have me considering what different enemies are doing. That's a major element of great combat, the interplay between those variable enemies along with level design used to draw out their strengths while highlighting your weaknesses. The only real thinking in Resident Evil Village is maybe how to juggle this group of identically behaving monsters by getting in some stuns to keep a few at bay. For a counterexample, look at this still from Resident Evil 4. I see this and immediately I'm like, oh fuck. 9 enemies, 2 with shields, 2 with crossbows, at least 1 with a parasite in them, and the rest gunning for you from your flanks. These enemies might look the same, just dudes with different equipment, but that equipment promotes different methods of disposal and will uniquely affect your positioning. The Ganados and their assortment of gear or parasites are where most of the interplay between different enemies comes from in 4. Otherwise, things like the Novistadors or dogs are sequestered to their own sections, which is sort of a shame, but also more bugs in this game would probably make me shove a needle up my urethra, so we're good. There are spongy big boys thrown in with Ganados sometimes, most often those with chainsaws and later the minigunners. They'll kill you immediately if you're careless, but with how easy they stun lock with a shotgun or heavy pistol, they're dealt with pretty quickly. They're also the blind Wolverine dudes who are featured in two of the most memorable moments in the game. The combination of their weak spot being a small area of their back with their blindness makes them that big guy who gets stuck in the wall archetype of enemy, but they're so deadly and matched up with other enemies in such a way that most of the time you're trying to stay quiet instead of simply luring them to get their claws lodged in concrete. Getting out of the cage here is the hardest I clench my ass in the whole game, just hoping I can shoot the lock fast enough to book it because there's no way to quietly escape. The conflict becomes dealing with normal enemies or else avoiding them while minimizing noise so the big guys don't immediately run up and decapitate you. It's some devious shit, but it's fair and it's thrilling. Village wishes it had enemy synchronicity like that. But when enemies aren't paired up in ways to play off of each other and work the mental load of the player, then the level design can make up for that. So what is Village's combat design ethos? I think it's something like this. With limited consumable ways to crowd control, e.g. explosives, bullets for stunning, enemies that almost only do melee attacks, and the possibility for a player to run out of resources which could theoretically affect the rest of their playthrough, the game's focus is on tracks and loops to let players exploit enemy pathing to either escape an encounter they can't afford to take on, or maximize the use of their consumables to take out groups of enemies they herded themselves. This is lifted straight from the Resi 4 playbook and is exemplified best by both games' early village assaults. Imagine blowing your load that early, like the moment the tip makes contact. Jesus. Both of these are timed encounters with overwhelming numbers of enemies, and they're the first major encounters in the games. Because of this, the villages are set up in ways to allow a player to run certain circuits, or else hole up in a building if they get overwhelmed or run out of ammo. 4 has more options than Village, but on a first playthrough what matters is the player internalizing the design and voiding their bowels. For the rest of Village though, this design is only reiterated and simplified. Some levels might offer explosive barrels or flour for crowd control, while others will place in shelves to block a pathway, but these additions can't elevate combat encounters which don't evolve from Hour 1. The game's a damn cowboy simulator. You just rustle up a herd all the livelong day around boxes or barrels or shelving or industrial equipment. And this is all predicated upon what difficulty you're playing at. The game doesn't have the enemy numbers or resource scarcity to truly make a player sweat unless it's on the hardest difficulty, Village of Shadows. The mode feels slapped together, it just jacks up enemy health, super armor, and speed while randomly plopping in extra enemies and encounters that are just made more frustrating for it. Whoa, and instead of 1 armored Lycan, what if 2? Or how about we needlessly block your path in this quick sprint away from Propeller Face? Stupid. But Village of Shadows at least requires the full use of its level design to fight enemies if you so choose. Even on hardcore and below, much of the time I found myself taking enemies face on and not minding my surroundings because I didn't feel pressured to do so. What's the point in crafting levels like this if the player doesn't have to use them? And even when you do use them, it doesn't mean they've gotten more complex. That being said, there are moments that stand out. The first half of the Lycan Stronghold encounter with the 2 levers is a good one. There are 2 narrow paths to the levers, one is up a ladder and one upstairs. Unfortunately, both allow for very static standoffs. You can just shoot everyone coming up the ladder in a procession, or be smart enough to place a mine on the stairs and use a grenade if that doesn't clear the Lycans. If you aren't so smart though and mess that up, you can run around and use these 3 explosive barrels as crowd control, or a way to save ammo. My Village of Shadows playthrough ended up kinda pissed because of that ladder and having a shotgun with an upgraded rate of fire, but this standard playthrough is more hectic. I had to be quick on my feet, smart with the barrels and maneuvering about. I also clutched with the stun grenade right here, very proud of that gamer moment. Another encounter I like is the jetpack soldats and the grind shaft. The combination of increased enemy mobility while the player's is limited makes this one of the most stressful moments of the game for me. Your attention has to bounce between these flying tanks and the metal walkways composed almost entirely of dead ends just waiting for you to fuck up, and you will. It's an effective moment because it subverts the established design ethos described before. With the only way to get around them being these drops to the lower levels, you are given space to run away, but there isn't any herding, it's just 2 bipedal engine blocks funneled toward you. The stress of unloading into a dude's big red butthole only to get drilled into your own brand new red butthole from behind is basically not replicated at any other point in the game, at least not organically in normal gameplay. Like many areas though, you can just run away, making this completely avoidable. If you stay to collect some mechanical hearts though, the reward is all the more worth it. Finally, my favorite combat engagement in Resident Evil Village is the Butcher. This optional mini-boss makes almost all of the elements of the level design ethos shine, and it creates a fast-paced, stressful encounter that has me sweating every time I do it. I love it. This tiny meat room is a great loop, having you ascend and descend this platform and scurry around its base with the Butcher hot on your tail, able to close the gap with his jump and even call in some bat boys to help him out. Explosives are encouraged here, with opportunities to place your own mines as well as timing shots on the red barrels. And in the case you don't have the means to defeat him, the way to the loot you want will take 3 well-placed pistol shots at least, requiring precise aim from afar or the possibility of being hammered up against the wall if you're too slow near the door. It's everything one could ask for from Village, and for that I won't ever forget it. In total, those moments make up about 15 minutes of a roughly 10-hour game. 2.5% of the game is well-made, full-body, big-dick combat encounters. Now, to be fair, Resident Evil 4 also doesn't have many levels that replicate what its first Village attack did. There are the forts, the one after you get access to the sniper rifle, and the other with the 2 chainsaw ladies, the water room we saw before, and the, the card key level on the island. You can see the footage, it's this place. It's a big game, so I might be missing a couple, but these are the prominent ones. As we know from Lamhoot's Resi 4 video all those years ago though, this game puts its focus on overall pacing and offering a breadth of different encounters. It's a non-stop procession of shooting people in every configuration they could think of. Defending against an onslaught in a cramped house, jumping between minecarts away from parasites and chainsaws, reacting quickly to an ambush from both sides, sniping people on the sky gondolas while Ashley is stoked for every kill. To do this list real justice would be to talk about the game in its entirety basically, but trust me, the game has you doing so many different things, and that will usually involve messing with the level design. Complexity is saved for a few occasions, but unlike Village, that's not a missed opportunity, that's according to plan. With the mechanics and enemy design as good as they are, Resi 4 can afford to scale back its levels to highlight those strengths with contained, almost directed moments. That variety does limit the sense of a learning curve to the level design, but that's made up for with different and sometimes just more enemies. Village, in contrast, has a more simple and samey combat experience. Like I said earlier, you're doing the same stuff in the factory that you were doing in the castle. Besides shooting requiring more precision because of big red buttholes, I don't feel like I've gotten much better at the game in its final levels, or had to steadily learn an increasingly complicated language of level design and mechanics, culminating in a sort of test combining most of the previously established elements to push me to play as hard as I can. Shit, the last non-boss encounter in the game is the Chris Redfield section where you gun down waves of lichen in linear corridors. Maybe it was supposed to create a catharsis for the player, but without having ever pushed you to a point where catharsis would be the most appreciated, it just comes off redundant and unfulfilling. What betrays Village in the end is its desire for spectacle. Though it incorporates many elements from Resi 4, it also inherits some of the design philosophy of Resi 7 as well. 7 masqueraded as a classic Resident Evil experience with the residents that had you backtrack some and controlled the pacing through the use of keys sectioning off parts of the house, but that didn't sustain the whole experience. It was the Baker family getting right up in your grill that mattered, that kept people moving through that game. First time through 7, I had a blast being tormented by these demented swamp people in this well-realized locale. But on second blush, I have to agree with Lamhoot's assessment of the game. You realize how static and kind of boring the rest of the game is when the initial excitement is behind you. Outside of its more spectacular moments, I feel 7 is a pale imitation of its forebears. And I can say the same about Village. Village goes bonkers in ways I appreciate, but it is not an evolution of Resident Evil 4. Beneviento is a new classic gaming moment that I'm sure we will reference for years to come, but that section has nothing to do with the main mechanics that the rest of the game uses. It just takes from the modern horror adventure landscape and creates a truly creepy escape room. Village's strengths come out when it doesn't take from Resident Evil 4, or else uses that game's aesthetic to have creeps mug at you, or chase you, or chainsaw you as a junkyard mecha. But unlike 4, where the combat evolved and informed the spectacle by creating exceptional conflict for the player, Village's combat is an obligatory means of shuttling one between bespoke moments of campy excess. It plunders so much from 4, and yet it forgot to steal its most valuable asset.
Money givers. Money givers on Patreon. Come get your money back. I'm talking to you, John Beatty, JC, and Lamhoot. Come get the money before I come get you.
No.